So I extend a warm good evening to all the distinguished panelists and esteemed guests who have gathered this evening. It is my privilege to welcome you all to the second edition, to the second event in our HERA talk series. And this is a panel discussion titled HERA Forum, and we are fortunate to have with us an array of distinguished speakers and graduate students from many reputed international universities across the globe. Now, introducing myself, I am 𝗵𝗘𝗥𝗔, currently volunteering as the student representative for 𝘖𝗘𝗧 Kerala chapter, and I'm currently a fourth year undergraduate student in electrical and electronics. So before moving into the panel discussion, I would like to request all the participants to be actively engage with the panelists and post your queries and doubts within the chat box, and display the same level of enthusiasm which you displayed in the morning sessions as well. Now, it brings me immense pleasure to be the moderator, and it is my privilege today to be welcoming our distinguished guest for today's evening. So without further delay, let me welcome our guest, Dr. 𝗵𝗘𝗧 𝗵𝗘𝗧𝗏. Dr. 𝗵𝗘𝗧 has completed his PhD in mechanical engineering from Virginia Tech, US. He is currently working as a product owner at 𝗘𝗏 Robotics, Blacksburg, Virginia. We welcome you, sir. Next, I extend my heartfelt welcome to Dr. Michael J. Matthew. He has completed his PhD in robotics from the University of Birmingham, UK. He is currently working as a robotics research engineer at Ocado Technologies, UK. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, I welcome Dr. 𝗖𝗘𝗧. He has completed his PhD in robotics from the Robotics at the National Technological University, Singapore. He is also currently working as a doctoral fellow in the Delta Labs at National Technological University. A warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, welcome Mr. Tony Matthew, who is currently a postgraduate student in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Ottawa. He is also working as a wage engineer at Ocado. We welcome you.
Thank you, 𝗵𝗘𝗥𝗔.
Next, I welcome Mr. 𝗠𝗘𝗧 who is a master's student in autonomous systems at the Technological University in Denmark. We welcome you to this panel discussion. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. 𝗓𝗚 𝗔, who is currently a master's student in systems and automation engineering at RWTH Aachen in Germany. Welcome you, sir, to this panel discussion.
Thank you.
So once again, I extend my wholehearted welcome to all the panelists and the participants who have gathered with us today for this discussion. And now we'll be moving on to the panel discussion. And since we have panelists from many different countries across the globe, I would like to request the panelists to answer a most commonly asked question. It is their personal story of how they started their robotics journey and why they ended up choosing the particular program and the university that they are in now. And since each individual panelist has a unique story to tell, I'd request all the panelists to participate in answering this question. And I welcome Dr. 𝗵𝗘𝗧 to share his story with us. So, sir, can you take over?
Yeah, I can do that. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. So I completed my bachelor's from CET in 2013. I was interested in robotics and mechatronics. I applied to a bunch of universities. Some of the options that were available at that time was there was a master's in mechatronics at NIT Suratgarh, and there was also an integrated master's and PhD program at 𝗖𝗘𝗧 in West Bengal. I got accepted to both, and I ended up talking to one of my seniors, and he's here with us, 𝗂𝗘𝗘𝗘. He convinced me that 𝗖𝗘𝗧 was a better option, looking at it from the scope of the course as well as the fellow students that will already be there. So I ended up going to 𝗖𝗘𝗧 for my master's. Initially, when I joined there, the plan was to continue on, finish a PhD there itself. But again, talking to my seniors, batchmates, and my advisor at that time, Dr. 𝗬𝗔, I ended up being convinced that it made sense to go outside India to finish up my PhD. So towards the end of 2015, when I had finished my master's, I ended up applying to a couple of universities outside India through fellowships as well as like direct applications to the universities themselves. Got accepted into a couple and finally chose Virginia Tech. Started my PhD in robotics within the mechanical engineering department at Virginia Tech in 2016. And since 2019, I've been working as a product owner at Robotics. And that's mostly my story. We can get into more details of why I chose certain options as compared to others, but I think that can be done later on. For now, I think I'll pass on to Michael.
Yeah, thank you. So my journey into robotics wasn't random, but the way I reached where I am today was in a convoluted way, I would say, because I used to build things back in my high school as well, and I wanted to build this moving stuff. So I went and asked one of the senior people in my mom's office to choose, when I had to choose the stream which to pick, and he said electronics is the best, and that's how I ended up in electronics and instrumentation. And okay, when I look at hindsight, I think that was not the greatest decision I made. But anyway, I ended up in electronics. And in India, the system is quite rigid because even after you complete one bachelor's, it's quite difficult to actually change your field. So, if you want to study computer science or something else, you need to write the gate for that particular field. And if you have completed your course 4 years in one subject and completely learning a different subject, to write gate is also not that straightforward. So that's how I ended up taking mechatronics at 𝗖𝗘𝗧 because it was having a good overlap between electronics and robotics. But my intention was to get into robotics. That's how I ended up in mechatronics. So after my master's at Durgapur, so we had a few other seniors who used to apply for these international scholarships from India. One of them being MEXT in Japan, and then other one being this Commonwealth scholarship. And that's how I actually came about the existence of such scholarships. So if you go to the Ministry of our external Ministry of Higher Education, they do have a page that actually lists a set of scholarships available for Indian students to go abroad, both for masters as well as PhD. So if you are, I don't know about the current condition at CET, but when so in between my my masters and my PhD at UK, I actually was doing a PhD at IIT Bombay. So what I actually saw one difference in IIT was that every such scholarship that comes, that gets notified to the students. So, but that wasn't the case when I actually studied at the CET. So the students doesn't actually know what our scholarships or what our opportunities do exist. But in IITs, they do actually have a mailing list that keeps telling the students of so opportunities do exist. So that does make a difference because students know, okay, existence of such things. So my case, I actually came to know because my senior knew it, right, at CSIR. So then when I put up my application, so they called me for an interview. Actually, I didn't think that I would be called for an interview. So, but anyway, they called. That's when I actually, and then one of the requirements for the interview was that you need to have talked to a professor, and then you need to come up with his consent before attending the interview. So I went and searched for all the good universities in the UK. And then I stumbled upon one professor because he was doing exactly the same proposal I wrote for my scholarship application. So I actually contacted him he liked me. And curiously, instead of giving a consent, he completely gave me an admission itself in one day. So he pressured the university to give me an admission letter. So I went to the scholarship with that letter. Somehow it worked, and that's how I ended up in the UK. So between the decision of the Commonwealth and after my master's, I had a period of 8-9 months where I didn't know what was the result of the scholarship application. So that's how I ended up joining IIT Bombay in between. So that's my journey so far. And then after completing my PhD at University of Birmingham, again, it wasn't a smooth journey. It was actually quite a bumpy one. But then after that, I started working as a robotic research engineer for Ocado Technologies. Currently, I work for a division called Haptic Robotics. So with robotic manipulators, we concentrate on doing picking and packing with robotic arms. So that's my journey so far. Yeah, further details can be told later. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Can I request Dr. Srikanth to share his journey?
Hello, everyone. Sorry. Hi, Bijo and Tony. Good to see you after a long time. And thanks for this opportunity. Okay, so I did my bachelor's in electrical and electronics in CET. That was, my batch was 2009 batch. And at that time, I had no idea that I was interested in robotics. So only at the end of third year, right, when we had to do the final year project. So the project that we did was voice controlled robotic arm. So it was entirely different from what the other teams were doing, because they were all focusing on electrical stuff. Whereas I and Tony, actually, Tony was also in my group. So we were focusing on this robotic arm and stuff. And we were really interested in that. I mean, one of the master students in CET was helping us in doing that. And we were so fascinated to see all these things that they were doing in their lab. So that was the first time when I was really interested in robotics. Okay. But I didn't know that was what I was supposed to be. But again, I continued with my electrical journey. Then I started doing my PG diploma in Bangalore in National Power Training Institute. And I got carried away with that. But later I realized that that was not my cup of tea. So I had to switch to robotics because there's a what do you call, a more interesting world out there, which I realized. So when it came to PhD applications, so sorry, I was initially applying for masters, but then I thought if you're going to do masters and then do PhD later, instead of that, how about you do a direct PhD? Because at that time, it was possible for you to, even now, it is possible for you to apply for PhD positions directly. I don't know how it works in India, but in foreign universities, it's possible. So that's why I decided for PhD rather than going for a master's. Okay, so in my case, there are a couple of factors, not a couple of factors, actually 3-4 factors, which actually was taken into account when I was applying for these positions. So the first one was the country, of course, because I would like to be in a country which is closer to home and safe and the weather similar to Kerala, for instance. This all matched up when I found Singapore, because it's very close, 4 hours journey from Kerala, and it's very similar to Kerala as well in terms of the weather and other stuff. But the only issue was it's a bit expensive. The life is a bit expensive. Now that's where the scholarship came in. So that means if you want to be here, it's better to have a scholarship. Otherwise, it's going to be really a trouble studying here. That's what I realized. So the second preference was the university. So Singapore has NUS, National University of Singapore, then NTU, Nanyang Technological University. We have SUTD, Singapore University of Technology and Design, then Singapore Institute of Technology, SIT. So there are a lot of choices that you have here. But I went through the projects they're having and the labs in terms of robotics they have here. Then I realized that in NTU, in Robotics Research Lab, they have an interesting project going on with Rolls-Royce, especially for propeller blade finishing and other stuff using robots. So that's where I wanted to go. So I started applying for that project. But another thing that you have to be very careful about is the supervisor. It's actually an unspoken truth, but it's the truth. Okay. Because if your supervisor is a nice guy, if he's flexible and lenient, then your PhD journey is going to be really smooth. If not, it's going to be a bit of a trouble. So I asked a couple of guys, actually a couple of guys from CET itself, who were studying in NTU, how this professor is, like the professor who is undertaking this project. And what he said was, he was a very nice guy. He's an Italian. He looks like Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings, and he likes coffee. It didn't help much, but I realized that 𝗧𝗵𝗿𝗂𝗧𝗿 is a very good professor. So that's about the supervisor. And then there is a scholarship opportunity. So if you go for a master's, it's highly unlikely that you are going to end up with a scholarship. But for PhD, yeah, you will be able to get a scholarship if you apply properly. These were the factors that motivated me to land here. And it was a painful journey because I had to wait almost 1 year, because the first time I applied, even though I got in, I couldn't find a position with scholarship. So I had to wait 1 more year, after which I got the position and the scholarship was available, and I started doing my PhD. So I recently finished my PhD almost a year ago. Now I'm working as a postdoc research fellow in 𝗘𝗘 Corporate Lab, Singapore itself. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We can discuss more details later. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was really insightful, and thanks for sharing your journey. Now, can I invite Mr. Tony Matthew to share his master's journey and own process?
Yeah, hi guys. I actually didn't have a proper studies when I started initially. So after my BTech, so I was in batch of 2013 with 𝗵𝗰𝘥𝘢𝗵𝘃𝗺 and 𝗔𝗵𝗃, and I completed it. I joined a company. So I worked there in Bangalore for around 2 years. 1 year after, I started feeling like this isn't something which I wanted to do. So I started looking into what I need to do to maybe immigrate. So that's when I started seeing my batchmates who had already did something already, who are doing studies abroad. So I talked with some of them, and they gave their perspective, and based off that I decided, so I want to do masters, but I don't want to spend too much on my higher education. So that's when I started like filtering which country I want to pursue. So I could see that Germany and Canada was the best option available for me there, because immigration wasn't too much difficult. Studies won't cost much. So I did some more research and could see that Canada best fits my interest, because education was cheaper and the language constraint wasn't there. So because in Germany, I believe you need to learn a bit of German. So I tried my hand there, did A1 certificate, but I realized that wasn't my cup of tea. So I took the GRE and TOEFL while I was working and applied to universities here in Canada. So right here, there were like provinces which speak just French, English, and which had both. So I just applied to universities which were either bilingual or just English, and also where the weather isn't too extreme. So something which is which can be bared by us. So that's how I decided, and rest is I can elaborate later.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That was really informative. And thanks for sharing your story with us. And now we've seen like countries where predominantly English is the language of communication. And we also have Mr. 𝗖𝗘𝗧 and Mr. 𝗖𝗘𝗧 who are doing the masters in a country, non-English speaking country. So can I request Mr. 𝗖𝗘𝗧 of why he ended up choosing Germany and what's his story and reason behind that? Can you please?
Yeah, actually, yeah. First of all, I did my bachelor's. I mean, first of all, I will just talk about my story.
Okay.
I did my bachelor's from CET. I did applied electronics and instrumentation on 2015. So during that time, I was totally passionate about robotics. So my final year project was drone. and implementing some SLAM algorithm on drone navigation and all kind of thing. And after that, I just joined a firm called 𝗙𝗧 Robotics, which is located in Cochin. That was also a robotics company. And during that time, I got a chance to attend this top robotics conference called ICRA. It's also pronounced as ICRA, or International Conference in Robotics and Automation. So during that time, I got a lot of opportunity to interact with the research areas and professors and the university and everything. So from that time itself, I got a feeling that I want to do some higher education in a country which is totally other than India. So that was the main motivation for me to doing the master's in a country like Denmark. So the main question is, why Denmark? I have my personal preference, I would say, because if you look at the most happiness, I mean, there's a list called happiness index of countries in the world. So if you look at the list, Denmark is in the top 3 one. So when you're doing higher studies, my personal preference was, I want to be happy. I want to be happy, and I don't need any stress while doing this kind of masters or pursuing a new thing in my life. So that was the main preference why I chose Denmark. And also Denmark is, of course, Denmark, the official language of Denmark is Danish, but 90% of the people speak fluent English. And also the education I'm getting is also, I don't see any problem that part. Apart from that, these are the reasons why I chose Denmark. Also, there was a reason, because of course, I consider use as a trick to my studies. But if you look at the amount of money you're paying for your high studies in US, it's like 70 lakhs in Indian money, the tuition fee itself. But in Nordic countries, it is just half of it. Of course, in Germany, it is free, but if you want to get into a country like Germany, you need a high amount of GPA. So I don't have that much amount of GPA to get into Germany or other universities. So I optimized these all parameters and then just went for Denmark. Yeah, that's my story. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. That was really eye-opening, new perspective actually. And now, can Mr. Preston please tell us about your journey towards pursuing masters in Germany?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you once again for inviting me. Yeah, so my story is kind of similar to what everybody has mentioned. I think I'm the youngest here because I passed out from CET for electrical and electronics engineering in 2018. And yeah, like from the campus placements, I was placed at MRF as an automation engineer. So like while I was studying in CET, I was not sure. Like I always had the interest to do some masters, but I was not sure what to specialize in. Like I had an interest in robotics, I had interest in automation. I also had interest in power electronics. So these were some courses that I liked and things that I've done with projects and stuff. But I was not sure, okay, what I should do exactly with my if I want to do higher studies. So I started working anyways in MRF as an automation engineer. And when you start working over there, we were actually assigned as a new team. Like, this was the first time that this MRF came up with such a team where we were like tasked with trying to improve the process, like basically industry 4.0. So we want to make use of some data from what you're getting in the processes and try to find how you can make it better or how you can make it more intelligent, things like that. So even we were not aware of it, even the company itself was not aware of how to make this possible, but they just decided to pull up a few engineers and try to make them work and make them start thinking in such ways. And it was really interesting. I found like the part like working over there, things that we did through getting data, things that we did through making things intelligent. It was really interesting. But the thing what I understood while working over there was I did not have any proper workflow. Like I did not have any professional training in this. I was just learning on the go. Most of the time things were going wrong. Sometimes it worked and we were appreciated for our work. But I always felt, okay, this is a field where we can actually do a lot of research. I can actually learn something more. And that was when it sparked in me, okay, I need to do some masters and I need to learn something more, get a professional training in this. And so I worked 1 year, and like during the last phase of my first year, I began thinking, okay, I should do some masters. And yeah, and that is when I had to obviously choose a country, because I think that's the first thing that you need to choose. And as Tony mentioned, I did not want to spend a lot of money in my education. I did not want to burden my parents. And I know in the end you would get a job, you can pay them back, but I just didn't. I just wanted to be more independent from the beginning, and that is why I chose Germany, because Germany you have no tuition fees, and you just pay a little contribution every semester. That's basically not for your education, it's just something else. Maybe I can explain later. But that was the main reason why I was not just Germany, at least many of the universities in Europe. There are really good universities in Europe, and majority of them did not, you do not have any tuition fees over there. And that's why I consider many of these universities, but Germany was really in my interest, because even during my work in MRF, I had the opportunity to speak with a lot of German engineers and even German students who used to come with, like, when we had different projects in the MRF, the equipment. So I had a lot of collaborations with them as well. So even they have always have given, I think it was that really made me more interested in coming to Germany, I guess. And yeah, and that is why I decided to do masters. I chose there's a couple of good universities in Germany, but what made me decide on RWTH is because I was interested in this particular field of Industry 4.0 activities and automation engineering, and the course, the curriculum, everything in this particular university was really matched to my needs, or what I vision myself doing in the future. And that is how I came to choose this. And now I'm here, I'm almost done with my studies. I'm actually doing an internship right now. Yes, and hopefully in a few months I'll be done. And yeah, that's my story so far.
Thank you, sir. And once again, thank you also, panelists, for sharing your story. What I understood that is that for every country there's a different requirement, and for each university professor there are different ways of approaching and stuff. And one common thing that most applicants who aspire to pursue higher studies in robotics or any branch in particular is what are the prerequisites. And since this panel discussion is focused on higher education robotics, I would like to request the panelists to answer the most common question that the applicants have. Like, what are the prerequisites? Are the prerequisites general? Like, are all abroad requirements for universities the same, or does it vary depending on the country of interest, or does it depend on the university? Uh, and I know that the present scenario, especially the pandemic, has affected the application process and requirements from different universities. So, can the panelists take upon this topic and give their valuable insights into the requirements for the universities or the country which they are currently pursuing their studies? Dr. 𝗵𝗘𝗧, can you give the prerequisites of going into US, especially this present pandemic scenario?
So in general, you need to have cleared GRE and TOEFL, but because of the pandemic, at least some universities have waived requirements on one or the other or both of these exams. So that's actually a good thing. You may not need to apply for clear GRE or TOEFL if you're applying anytime soon. That's not applicable for all of the universities. If you really want to know which universities, do check the websites of the universities themselves. That'll give you an idea. In terms of preparing your profile, before that, you also need to prepare a good statement of purpose. It's essentially a 1 to 1.5 page essay about why you want to do a PhD or a master's in a university of your choosing. That needs to be a personalized letter. I know there are services outside, professional services, which would help you write an SOP, but I would recommend trying to write your SOP on your own. Most of these services, based on what my friends have told me, essentially just ends up correcting your grammar mistakes or like language. But it's better if you write your own personal story as to why you want to do a master's or a PhD elsewhere. After GRE TOEFL statement of purpose, it's about letter recommendations. Make sure you get letter of recommendations from people you have worked with. This could be professors that taught you courses or managers that you have worked with if you're currently working in these, while the other could say you're good from a professional perspective. But these are the general documents or like materials that you need to prepare. Other than that, I would say focus on making your profile look better. This includes things like your GPA, but it doesn't mean that you have to have the best GPA ever. You could also improve your profile by showcasing projects that you've worked on. So if you are already participating in tech fest or have your own hobby projects, try to post details about them online, have a personal website of your own, or you can even just put your code in a GitHub repository or something similar. Anything that would give others a view into what you're interested in, and also a little bit of proof that you can actually do what you're trying to say that you can do. Publications are helpful. I'm not saying they are mandatory, but they're always a good to have. And if you're doing publications, try to do them in international conferences or international journals. They are also a good way to form connections. If you actually attend these conferences, there will be invited professors from other universities and other countries. And that will be a good opportunity to talk to them about their work as well as make connections. The last thing I would recommend is if you feel your curriculum or syllabus is not covering topics of your interest, there are always online courses outside, certification courses. That would be one other way to augment your learning experience. But yeah, these are what I would say a generic list of prerequisites.
Thank you, sir. And while we are in the US, masters in India, right? Hello.
I can hear you, but I didn't understand if that was a question or.
Hello, sir. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are audible.
Sir, I would like to know your opinion about pursuing the masters within India itself. What's your opinion? Masters in India.
If you're planning to go for further studies abroad, it's okay. This is just me talking about US programs. Things might be different in other countries. At least in the United States, it's easier to get into a master's program as compared to getting into a PhD program. The reason is pretty simple. If you're coming in for a master's program, you're probably going to pay out of your pocket. So you're providing money to the university. Whereas if you're coming in for a PhD program, there are higher chances that you will either get a fellowship or some kind of a teaching assistantship or research assistantship position. So the university will be paying you. And just by that, number of PhD students accepted are lesser as compared to the number of master students accepted. So I would say it's a personal preference. If you really want a free education, you should probably build up your profile and then apply for a PhD. But if you think you can manage the finances of a master's program, definitely come for a master's. There will be a lot of opportunities. You'll get a lot more opportunities if you do a master's here as compared to doing a master's in India. But yeah, I would say it's a personal preference.
Thanks again.
All right.
Now, I would request Mr. Dr. 𝗵𝗘𝗥𝗔 to share about the applying for robotics masters within the United Kingdom. So can you share how can participants, especially new undergraduate students, apply for the same?
Michael, you're muted again, I think.
Yes. So as Vijay said, I also have done my master's in India, but then I know the details on what happens if you want to apply for a master's here. So it depends on the university. In the UK, there are two kinds of universities. One university is called the universities that belong to the Russell Group, which are actually research intensive universities, and the universities that do not belong to the Russell Group, right? So and typically the education, as well as if you look at international rankings, it's actually the universities within the Russell Group that are actually in the league tables, not the other ones. And again, in terms of fees, it's actually different. So if you want to, and the masters in the UK is actually for 1 year, unlike US or Germany, where it's actually for 2 years, or in India. So in a non-Russell Group institute, the fees is around 13 lakhs, just the course fees. And for a robotics course, then in a Russell Group institute, the fees would start from 21 lakhs to 35 lakhs, depending on where you choose to study. This is for 1 year, and your living expenses on top of that. So you don't get much opportunities to work. You actually can work around 20 hours a week legally, and probably you wouldn't even able to do that because it is actually 2 years masters crammed to a single year. The workload is hectic, so you don't get much free time unless you are actually super good at managing your time. So that's kind of the expense. And in terms of the requirements to get into the universities, it depends again on the university. For common, everyone requires IELTS. But then if you are applying for Imperial, Cambridge, Oxford, or UCL, you might you need a GRE as well. Other universities doesn't require a GRE. But then bear in mind, one thing I have noticed is that because it is a 1 year master's, back in India, it is not considered a master's because it is just 1 year. Though you actually do 180 credits, it is not considered because you have already done. But in terms of PhDs, if you want to study, it does give you more opportunities to do. But from a job perspective, though now UK gives 2 years work permit for masters and 3 years after PhD, it would be easy to get a job if you get into one of the best universities to get, like in the Russell Group, or to get a job. If you belong to a non-Russell Group, it is quite tough to actually get a job after the masters. I mean, if you want to work in the same field you actually opted for. But in terms of requirements, it's that. And from a PhD perspective, as Vijay said, it's the same thing. You need reference letters, you need a good profile. So I mean, it could be whatever you do, right? I mean, so one exercise I could actually tell you is that when you do this online courses, or when you do any sort of courses, if you are doing a MATLAB program, if you're doing a Python program, just make a repository and put it against your profile in GitHub, so that actually when you write something in the CV, people knows that, okay, this guy actually had done something against this for these subjects, right? So for example, suppose you actually don't know what to even do it, right? So maybe then you actually can pick up a textbook where you actually have problems in the behind, and then you could actually solve them programmatically rather than writing on paper. So there are many questions which you actually could do like that. For example, if you do some sort of optimizations or things like that, you could actually make simple scripts for it, and you can actually even put up that. So I have even seen people having GitHub repositories with the answers to the textbooks as their contribution, which also kind of shows that, okay, this guy actually has read this textbook, actually has solved the questions, and the answers are out there. And also, so in terms, so when I actually applied for my PhD, I actually had a profile in the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 website, but at that time, most of the stuff I used to do was in MATLAB. And every course I used to attend in Udacity or something, I used to actually write a simple script for that, and I had it in my MathWorks page. And it was actually that MathWorks page I sent to my prof when I actually had the interview. Yes, so in terms of PhD requirements, it's actually a profile and then reference letters. And a good CGPA would be really helpful to actually get a scholarship. And again, actually, how to find a scholarship, I think I would actually discuss later. But in terms of requirements, these are the only things that you would require. Yep. But okay, one personal note, I actually wouldn't recommend to come for a master's in the UK because it's quite expensive. And from my perspective, you could actually get a better master's in a European country, and then come here for PhD. That would be actually a good way to come. For example, if you go to Belgium, Leuven, or if you actually go to Ghent, or there are other universities in Belgium, France, or Germany, where you can do your master's and then come for a PhD here. Again, for a PhD, it is actually a 3-year PhD. So it's a structured PhD course. Meaning that you don't do any coursework with your PhD. There are a couple of universities that actually do non-structured PhD. It's actually a master's plus PhD, like an integrated PhD. So where you do 1-year course and then 3 years of PhD. So when I say 3 years, is actually 4 years. It's actually 3 years for doing your PhD and 1 year for writing. So in total, it's 4 years, but it's a 3 years for PhD. So again, from my experience in the UK, so if you have a very good overlap in the domain which you are going to do, then it's actually good enough, because 3 years is enough to do the research. But then if your expectation is to actually build up some background to actually before doing your research, then maybe UK is not the best option, because you may not have all the required courses. So you'll have to do an extra load, because you would be learning quite a lot of courses before you actually start your work there. So you may have to do a much more heavy lifting. But I think when if you do a bunch of courses along with your PhD, it is good, because you get used to the system. You also get time to actually be a part of the lab, work with some other research projects that exist in the lab before you get into your own work. So in those cases, but then if you are a person with a good enough industrial experience and you just know what to do, and it's your opinion to actually get out the PhD, yes, this is a good option to come out and then do it. So these are the things I would say about UK. Yeah.
I think so that was very detailed, and almost all of the what initiatives should we take before coming were covered. That was very detailed and really helpful for us participants. Can I pass the baton to Mr. Chandy Alex, and can you explain how it is to apply to a European university, and what are the prerequisites and initiatives we should take as an applicant?
Yeah, so in European universities, I think all you need is the language requirement, like TOEFL or IELTS. That's also the reason why I took the European universities, because you don't need to write GRE. Personally speaking, I'm a person who don't like to write this kind of competitive exam, because I was almost done this competitive exam after +2 entrance engineering exam. Then I got totally tired of this kind of thing. So I just my requirement was like in Technical University of Denmark, they require TOEFL, and it has a minimum score. Then they will ask for your GPA, transcript, and your CV and all kind of thing. So there is a common format, common stuff you need to fill up and send it to the admission office. Also, as Bijo and Michael said, you need recommendation letters, statement of purpose, and rest of the application process are totally same as UK and other countries. The only difference is you don't need GRE in Denmark or other European universities. Most of the European universities. I don't know about Germany, but Germany also, I'm not sure about Germany, but the other Nordic countries doesn't require any GRE or anything. That's one of the advantage of these countries. Then it is nice to have some experience, because if you're working on a robotics, having some experience from industry, student job in the same field, and that will help you in a future career growth. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. Talking about tuition fee, it will cost around 10 to 15 lakhs. Then on the top of that, you need to find out some living expenses. Also, when it comes to the rule, while your work related to your work, it's the same with the UK. Like you are only allowed to work for like 20 hours per week. During summer time, you are allowed to work unlimited time, but other than that, you are only allowed to work only 20 hours per week. So the basic structures and rules are almost the same in European countries as well. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, sir. That was insightful. Now, Mr. Tony Matthew, hello. Canada has recently become a really lucrative country for higher study aspirants, and I would like to know, we would like to know the prerequisites and the application procedure involved in applying to Canadian universities.
Yeah, so the reason Canada became a hotspot is easy immigration process, which happened with introduction of express entry. So while I was applying, so this was something which I had considered a long-term goal, which I had to immigrate and settle down. So I would say if you there are two options for whoever tries to do a higher education here in Canada. One is to do a master's degree from any of the universities, or they can do a PG diploma from any of the colleges in Canada. So personally, I would recommend doing a master's degree, because the PG diploma, it's recognized only within Canada. And if you are to complete a 2-year master's program here in Canada, you get a 3 years of stay back option with an open work permit, which allows you to move anywhere within Canada and work for any employer. And the prerequisite to apply to any universities are a language test, which can either be TOEFL, IELTS, or CELPIP, which is Canadian equivalent for English language test. So you don't need really high scores for that. Just clearing the bare minimum would be sufficient. And also, some of the universities require a good score for GRE. More than these, they take into consideration what you had already done when you did your bachelor's, or what you are doing while you are working. So essentially, if you can showcase something, some research which you had done already, maybe your academic projects and the relevant work experience while you apply, it helps in your admission process. Also, there are very limited number of universities here in Canada, so it's always helpful if you apply early to universities which you want to get admitted to. Also, do a master's here with research. You have to find the professor who is doing a research in similar field and contact him and showcase your interest. Only if he accepts you as your student, then only you are given an admission in the research stream. Otherwise, you will just be doing a coursework of maybe 10 courses and getting a master's degree. So like 𝗏𝗏𝗏 has mentioned before, my bachelor's research project was speech recognition and using it to control a robotic app. So my interest here was in networking and IoT field. So I tried to find someone who was doing something similar. So it was a professor here in University of Ottawa. So I contacted him. So he was doing some similar work. He was trying to develop his better speech recognition system. So because of that, he allowed gave me a project to work under him while I joined here, and because of that, I got TA and RA under him. So if you can find someone who did similar research, it helps your admission chances. And the TA and RA, whatever you get, basically covers for your tuition fee. So you will not be paying anything. And if you don't get a professor under whom you can work while you apply, you can always come here, complete one semester here, maybe take a course of professor whom you are interested to work with, and showcase your interest to him so that maybe he will accept you. That's another way to proceed. And PhD, I don't think anyone comes here with direct PhD admission. How it works always is you get into a master's program, you convert it to a PhD and complete it within like 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
You're muted.
Sorry. And so that was really insightful. And next we have some, they are related to German university. So Mr. Price John, so can I read out the question? So the question is, so it is the participant wants to know if having a work experience before applying for masters is mandatory while applying.
Okay. In Germany, generally you do not need, like, it's not a mandatory requirement to have work experience. It depends on the course. So at least in my university, I am doing this automation course, but there is also another master program specifically for robotic systems engineering. And for that course, they require work experience of at least 1 year. But I would say majority, like at least 95% of the courses don't require any work experience. If the course involves some management component into it, yeah, they do ask for work experience that is needed. And when they ask for at least 1 year. That's all, nothing more. But otherwise, in general, to any technical courses, yeah, here we don't have any requirement to do work experience. But one thing I want to say for Germany is that we have this group of called TU9, like the top 9 universities in Germany, the top technical 9 universities. So in these universities, if you want to apply to Germany, you should definitely look into these ones, because I wouldn't say there's any ranking amongst them, but these are the top research units where you can actually gain a lot of experience and you can learn a lot of things from here. And even when employers look into, okay, what is your experience, when they see that you have come out of one of these universities, it makes a lot of difference. So we have to look, these are like public universities. In India, call them colleges. Similarly, call them public universities, and try applying them. And I believe in all of these top universities, we do have GRE. Like we have to write the GRE exam that's the criteria that is there in all of these universities. Apart from that, all other requirements remain the same. I hope I answered the question.
Yes, sir. So the GRA requirements and work experience requirements specific for the master's program and university you're applying, right?
It is fixed.
So moving on to Dr. Srikanth, sir. So Singapore is like a very good destination for students, especially Indian students, mainly because the culture and work environment is similar to our home country. And so can you like share the application requirements, procedures, etc.? Are the application process similar to the European and American countries, or is GRE score not required and stuff like that?
Right. So I have to be honest, because when I started applying, right, the procedure was a bit different. That was almost 6 years ago, like in 2015. So at that time, NTU used to conduct an outreach program in India, in Chennai and Delhi, so where you can go and attend interviews on site and they'll recruit immediately. But later, they don't have that procedure anymore. So I'm not exactly sure what's the procedure right now, but it is similar to what Biju and Tony said, like all the SOPs, the reference letters, all these things are the procedure involved in the procedure. But about the exams, the GRE, IELTS, this all depends upon what kind of course you're going to take. For instance, if you're going for a PhD course, right, it's usually you need a GRE, like that's the basic mandatory. It used to be GATE before, even GATE was fine, but nowadays just GRE. On the other hand, for master courses, it's a bit different, depends upon the course. For example, for certain courses, you also need to have an experience, a relevant industry experience, let's say for 2 years, for instance. So it all comes to what kind of course you're going to take. So certain courses require GRE, for example, all these technical courses. For business-related courses like MBA and you need GMAT. For some courses, GRE is also fine. And then there are some recent courses. For example, in NUS, they have started some recent courses like Masters in Artificial Intelligence and also Masters in Industry 4.0. So these are really good courses, but they started recently. But they don't need GRE. So you don't need GRE, you don't need a relevant industry experience. So you can directly go and apply. But just because of that reason, you have a lot of competition because everybody will apply. You don't have to write a GRE, right? Everybody will apply. So they have certain criteria, like possibly based on CGPA. I don't know exactly how they do that. They haven't disclosed that. But currently, due to Corona as well, it's a bit difficult for foreigners to come in here because there is restriction in giving out student passes as well. So currently, it might be a bit difficult to get in, but you can try later once the situation is fine. So yeah, that's all I know about the current procedure because I didn't go through that. That's why I didn't comment on that initially.
Okay, sir. Sir, while we are at it, you mentioned before that to pursue masters, it is necessary that you need to have scholarship backing you financially.
Correct.
So, getting that scholarship and how other participants can also apply for the same in the future.
Right. Okay. So you're talking about the PhD or the master's, because I think I lost you for a second here. Because in between there was a connection issue. Like
Oh.
which, the master's or the PhD are we talking about?
In general,
In
what
general.
scholarships do? Yeah.
Okay, so for masters, I don't think they have any scholarship, at least not in NTU. Generally, they don't do that. I think Bijo has also mentioned that for PhDs, you get scholarship, but for masters, you don't usually get scholarship. But the course fee also varies based on the course. For business-related course, you have higher fee, but for technical courses, you have comparatively less fee, but it's still expensive for us, like people who are not coming from a very wealthy background. It's a bit difficult for them. So in some of the universities, they do give out what you call subsidies. Not exactly subsidies, it's a kind of a bank loan, but it's a bit lenient, not like you have to pay immediately. You get a period of 2 years or something after you finish your course. You can do some work in between, and then later you can start paying it off. But for PhD, you have different kinds of scholarship. There is this Nanyang Presidential Scholarship, there is Nanyang Research Scholarship, but some of them has certain criteria as well. Like for instance, you have to be a Singapore citizen, for instance, which is difficult for us because we cannot get into those. But the most common scholarship is the research scholarship, Nanyang Research Scholarship, which usually everybody go for. For that, what I would suggest is like you directly contact the professor. I know it's a bit difficult because you tend to send out a lot of mails, and believe me, these professors are getting like hundreds of mails every single day. Okay, the professors themselves told me. So you might not find responses at first, but don't quit. I'm telling you, because it took me almost 1 year just to get the response from one single professor. Okay, so it's not just about the scholarship. It's also about if that particular professor or that particular project has an opening with scholarship. They might be having openings, but at the same time, they might not be having scholarship. So you cannot take it for granted. You have to check with them. You have to check with each of the professors or whoever is in charge with that particular project, I would say. Hello? Hello, Michael.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your insights, sir. And I would also like to ask the same questions regarding scholarship to Dr. 𝗂𝗑𝗧. I was informed that you have received a prestigious Commonwealth scholarship for funding your study. So is that limited to research applicants as well, or is it open to the general masters community?
So for the UK, for coming for masters, there are scholarships available. So one is actually the Commonwealth scholarship as well as the Chevening scholarship. And typically Chevening scholarship, around 70 scholarships are given every year. The only difference between a Commonwealth scholarship and a Chevening scholarship is that Chevening typically requires 2 years of work experience, while Commonwealth doesn't require any such it does not have any such requirements. So, and there are a couple of other specific scholarships for Indian students to universities like Cambridge and Oxford. For example, there is Manmohan Singh scholarship to Oxford, I think. And there is also similar some Tata scholarships to Cambridge, I forgot the name. But then if you want to find out what all scholarships do exist for students, you can actually go to the British Council's page. And there you can actually see all the scholarships that's actually available for Indian students. So apart from those scholarships, there are actually a couple of other scholarships, including the Commonwealth. As I said, I came to know about the Commonwealth scholarship from my senior, but then he came to know it from the following website. I will actually send the link to the website in the chat here. So this is actually the link of the page of higher education, Minister of Higher Education in India, which specifically shows all the external scholarships given to Indian students. That is actually supported by the government as well. So these scholarships, typically the process is like you have to go to Delhi to attend an interview, and the scholarships happen to different countries like Japan is there, Israel is there, New Zealand is there, UK is there, then Fulbright scholarships to the US is there. So such scholarships do happen. So, and typically people when me and Bijo went for the interview, one thing we noticed, the number of students who actually came for the interview from the south was quite less, because the interview happened in Delhi, many people doesn't come up to Delhi to actually attend the interview. But then, you shouldn't do that. Just go there. After all, it's a good experience. So that's with the thing. And again, other details. For example, if you are interested in any such, so again, coming to UK for masters, you will not actually get any scholarship, again for the reasons what Bijo said. And here the tuition fees of an international student is almost 2.5 times that of a local student. So universities likes to have international students, and because it's a good inflow of money, they will not actually give scholarships to international students in particular. And so this is for the scholarships. And then for all the students to actually know about all the opportunities, including the opportunities in the universities and also the opportunities in the industries here. So if you are after your PhD, if you are looking for a job, or after your masters, if you're looking for a job in robotics, it would be beneficial if you sign up for the mailing list, the European Union's mailing list, as well as the Robotics Worldwide mailing list. And the Robotics Worldwide, I think it is actually worldwide. You even get to know opportunities about such things in the US as well. I'll post the links of those two mailing lists in the chat now. What you can do is that you can sign up with your email into these things, and you can essentially put a filter in your Gmail or whichever email you use, so that it actually comes to a single folder, else it is going to clutter your inbox like hell. So it's going to be a lot. So this is the thing to the European Union's mailing list where you can sign up, and this is for the Robotics Worldwide. Yeah, so you can actually put up your email here. So this is actually, and even from my company, even now we actually, when we are trying to recruit, this is one of the pages we actually post our ads into. So we typically post into these websites than posting in the LinkedIn. LinkedIn because comes only the second, because we are specifically looking to robotics people, right? And it's so much easier to get into these people by posting into these websites, and all the people have typically got access to these things. So that's my information I have.
Thank you, that was really detailed. I request all the participants to take note of the links that were posted in the chat box. They're certainly very useful, and also, Jose, we can note them down and maybe mail it to the participants later. And thank you, sir, once again. That was very detailed, really detailed. And so one thing I saw, one question that I saw which was repeating in the chat was the job prospects. So it is a common factor that the job prospects vary depending on the country. So in the present scenario, generally speaking, how broad of a future and what prospects does robotics have in this in particular country? So can I start with Dr. 𝗵𝗘𝗧𝗧𝗿𝗂? How is the job prospect in the US as of now?
I would say really good. There is a lot of job opportunities both for masters and PhD students. There are a lot of new companies that are coming up in the field of robotics, not just startups, but even from established employers like Amazon. There are a lot of interesting projects that they are trying to work on. Like one of the new Amazon projects is trying to deliver packages using mobile robots to individual houses. And there is a lot of interest in self-driving as well. A lot of interest in medical robotics. So if you are worried about job prospects after finishing your master's in the US, I would recommend that you don't need to worry too much about that. Difference between a master's and a PhD, if you want to go into leadership position, if you already have a PhD, it might be easier as compared to a master's. But then looking at it from a timeline perspective, you could finish a master's in 2 years, get into the industry, and within 2 years, if you want, you could get into a leadership position. So timeline wise, it's pretty much the same. But yeah, job perspective is really good.
Thank you, sir. I also saw Mr. Chandial sharing in the chat box about the Odin cluster. So, sir, can you share more insights into that project and about robotics in Denmark in general?
Yeah, actually, um, generally speaking, in the area of robotics, you will not have any crisis finding a job, because robotics is a new technology and it's the most innovative technology, and everyone is investing a lot of money into this kind of technology like AI, robotics, blockchain. And I mean, these are the technologies which is disrupting current world and making bringing more changes into our social life. So talking about the job opportunities in Denmark, there's a robotics cluster called 𝗬𝗏𝗏 Robotics. It's pronounced as 𝗬𝗏𝗏 because it's a Danish word. So this 𝗬𝗏𝗏 Robotics has produced a lot of most world recognizable companies like Universal Robots, Mirror Robotics, and if you go to the website, you can find a lot of companies who is working in this robotics cluster. I can share the link right now. Yeah, these are the list of the companies and other members, universities and everything which is working on this 𝗬𝗏𝗏 robotics. So it is a kind of Silicon Valley, I would say, a Silicon Valley of, I mean, robotics version of Silicon Valley of Denmark. That's the best way. That's the best way I can phrase it. So no matter which university you study, there will be always an opportunity for robotics. That's my feeling. I mean, that's my experience. So in terms of opportunities, you don't need to worry about. But if you working in a software field, or I mean some regular IT person, then there will be a lot of competition, because the reason that these areas are totally crowded, and there's a lot of people who are more skilled, and I mean who has the skill to do this kind of job. But when it comes to robotics, the area is not crowded yet. People need, I mean, companies need people who has the expertise and experience in robotics, especially the main framework which is used in the robotics industry, like robot operating system, gazebo simulation, web bots. Also, if you are good at designing, like using the tools like SolidWorks or Fusion 360. And in addition to that, of course, you know that AI is having a lot of hype these days. And if you have the expertise in field like deep learning, machine learning, or neural designing the neural networks, that's also a very hot area that you can just gain some skill and just enter into the industry, and you can just easily go along. So that's a perspective about opportunities in robotics field. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir. That was a really meaningful insight. And we do have a lot of questions coming from the participant, but unfortunately, due to the time constraint, and I'd like to pose a last question. Since most of the panelists here have achieved their aim of completing masters or pursuing the current master's degree in robotics, so what is something that when you look back and feel that you could have done that part better, whether it was the application process or your undergraduate academics, CGPA, is there some factor which you think that you could have done better in the past? So, Dr. Michael.
Yes, so when I look back, so from a robotics perspective, however, so the thing when you do master's, PhD, if you want to stay in the field, when I look at it, the most important subjects are linear algebra and then probability and statistics. So if you have good sound basics on these two things, it is going to actually help you a lot. So whether you actually go computer vision or you go to machine learning or any of those fancy things, then if you are doing something related to robotics, these are two things that are very important. But that being said, I wouldn't say that, okay, other things like what I call multivariable calculus or things are not important. Why I say linear algebra is important, because we do everything using matrices and in a numerical way. We don't actually do in a symbolic fashion when you do the actual code. So because of that, then knowing a lot of properties of linear nonlinear controls, though there is a lot of stuff in nonlinear controls theory, people, when they apply to some systems, they don't typically go via nonlinear control strategies. They typically linearize the system using some standard techniques and still apply linear control theory principles. Again, because you are dealing with linear systems, it would be, and again, you are dealing with matrices and stuff like that. So it would be really good that if you would have good basics in this. So if you, the question is like, if you would have done something different back in my bachelor's, I would have thought of learning these things from an application perspective rather than just trying to solve these things. The way it is actually taught, at least when I was in CET, we had this small book and people used to just teach from that. And including me, I used to read that book and go for my exams. I never had to do anything because I am not boasting. I am okay with maths, right? So I didn't have to actually do it. So I could just read that book and go to the exams and still score good. And if that is your attempt at maths, maybe then that's not the best way to actually do it. So again, you need to actually know the physical significance of these things. So it would be nice that, and there are very good courses in YouTube. For example, from Gilbert Strang, there is engineering mathematics. There are a lot of lecture series. There is courses like linear algebra, again done by him. And then there is this multivariable calculus by, I forgot the name. Then there is also one more guy for partial differential equations. There are really good MIT courses that's available for free in YouTube. And when I was doing my master's, I used to actually listen to all those things, make my own notes and stuff like that. And so that's one thing I would do, to learn these things from an application perspective, rather than trying to just, trying to solve these questions. You are given a bunch of questions, you apply a formula to get the answer. That's not the best way to do it. So that's something I would have done differently. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. And now, can Dr. Srikanth also answer the same question? What would have you done differently if you were to do an application?
I totally agree with what Michael. Sorry, I just didn't get the name. Sorry, Michael. Yeah, sorry, got confused with the names. Anyway, I totally agree with what Michael said. The reason is I got a struggle a lot with mathematics and control when I came here. Okay, because just like he said, it's just the ditto. I would say I would like to use the exact words because that was the same condition that I also went through. Okay, so instead of learning it just to pass the exam, do it for acquiring the knowledge, and utilize all the possible platform that you have out there, which help you learn more, but things from different perspective. For instance, if you have a control system, right, it could be used for different purposes. You can control a car, you can control a robot, you can control a chemical plant. So there are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of applications. You don't want all of them. I mean, you cannot study all of them. Instead, take it, put it into a perspective, like in which area you are interested in, then I'll try to learn from that area. That way you won't get bored, you'll be interested, and you know how practical it is. So that's one thing I would like to point out. Okay. And the second thing is, like, keep updated with your area of interest. Understand what's going on. There are a lot of publications, go through them, see what's happening in the society. Okay. This not only is going to help you during the interview process, but also help you jumpstart your PhD and also to define your goals during a PhD. Because when I came here, I didn't have this. So I thought what I proposed was something really cool. And the first day I talked to my professor, he shows me, so this study has been done in 1991. I was like, wow, okay. So I'm heavily outdated out there, right? So it's good to understand what's going on in your area of interest, like whatever field you're interested in. Get updated with that, please. And one last thing, please have a good grip on at least one programming language. I'm not kidding, because I was an electrical student and coding was never one of my, what you call strong points or strong ability. So I found that very difficult when I came here. I had to learn MATLAB and Python after coming here. When I started my PhD, it was very difficult because trust me, it doesn't matter in which area you're going, right? Let's say you have an idea that you have to implement. How will you implement? You might not always have an actual working system, but make use of all the simulation platforms out there. Okay, so if you have an idea, if you want to put it into a working model or visualize something, you need a programming language, and it's gonna do great help for you like later in your career. So that is one thing I wish I knew at that time. And also, this is a bit off the track for Indian students, right? Like there was a question which was, is it better to do it in India or in foreign countries, right? I really want to emphasize on that. See, don't just go for higher studies outside India just for the sake of that. If you're going for that, there should be a reason. Find something that has high potential, like in India itself, go for it. But if you want to get that experience, like on foreign countries, there are different exchange programs. So please look up onto that, because NTU recently had launched an NTU at India Connect program like that, where people who are doing PhDs in higher institute of learning, they can come over for a year or so and do their rest of the PhD here. So these programs are there, exchange programs, and Connect at India, I think that's the name. So these provisions are there. So even if you're taking up a PhD position in India, you can go abroad, like not just NTU, like any universities. I think pretty much all of them have exchange programs. So go through that and see whichever you can apply for. So don't get limited because of these constraints. You can always find ways around all these restrictions, I would say. So yeah, it's a bit off track, but I would like to point that out. And I'll post the link in the chat box. Please take a look at that. See if you can apply. Yeah,
Thanks, sir.
Thanks. That's it.
Next, I would like to pose the same question to Mr. Tony. How do you have approached your application process?
So I would say, like Srikanth mentioned, learning one programming language helps. So for me, I would say Python would be the one which you can focus now with recent development in AI and machine learning, which are used heavily in all the fields. If you can do some courses there, it really helps. And maybe I would say try to write an SOP which you can use to apply to the university right now and see what you are missing there. So like you may not have any good research experience now, so try to build the gap now. So maybe it takes 1 year, maybe it takes 2 years, maybe it requires you to work for 1 or 2 years in an industry, but just try to focus on the field which you want to do research. Try to develop your skills in that field during this time, and once you are ready to do the application, I won't say like the right time to apply to the university which you want to pursue is when you are ready. Don't go with the subpar universities. Aim for the best. Aim for the professor under whom you have to work. So it really helps your career being in a good university compared to something below average.
Thank you, sir. I know that there's a lot of questions coming, a lot of questions pouring in, but unfortunately, due to the constraints on time, we'll take them up at a later date. So on behalf of me and the other organizers, I would like to personally thank all the panelists for giving us such a wonderful and informative session. There was a lot of quality information being tossed around, and I'm sure that many of the participants, all of the participants have derived useful information from this session. And now for the formal vote of thanks, I would like to welcome Ms. Hasna, who is currently the Vice Chair of IEEE RSSPC of MES Kutipram. Hasna, would you take over the mic?
Thank you, Abdul. So good evening, everyone. First of all, let me take this opportunity to say that I'm extremely honored to be given this chance to propose the vote of thanks on this concluding session of HERA. So through this panel discussion, we got a lot of valuable insights on higher education robotics and automation, not to mention a bunch of very interesting stories. We were able to understand the prerequisites, the expenses, and the details of the best available programs and universities to pursue while doing robotics abroad. So we have also been very fortunate to have an amazing panel of experts from various parts of the globe, all highly experienced in their arena. So on behalf of the RAS Kerala chapter of the RAS SBs of GEC, 𝘚𝗓𝗏, MES, and CET, we express our sincere gratitude to the panelists, Dr. 𝗵𝗔𝗧 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃, Dr. Michael J. Matthew, Dr. 𝘠𝗚𝗏, Mr. Tony Matthew, Mr. 𝗠𝗘𝗧 and Mr. Praise Thomas Johnson for enlightening us with the details of the higher education prospects in different countries across the globe. So as a token of gratitude and appreciation, we would like to present these virtual mementos to all of you. Once again, I express my sincere gratitude to you all. Now, the success of any event or a program is the enthusiasm shown by the participants. So a huge shout out to our attendees for actively involving in this session and engaging in with your questions and for making this event a successful one. And last but definitely not least, I would like to also thank our coordinators and team members without whom all of this would not have been possible. So once again, thank you to each and every one of you and hope you have a wonderful evening.